Beloved star, warmest welcome to Elven Pod 76. And this one is about the wisdom of the Bluebell moon of the Elven, which we are very much entering into now, more into the deeps of. And the Elven moons and the Elven flower moons relate to our soul star cycle of coming to Earth. And that means coming to Earth as our full oversoul, immortal starlight, I am presence. And the way that that works, what it feels like to come to Earth in oversoul presence, rather than leaving that behind as a disembodied part of us, but actually fully embodying and bringing this radiance and this source light intelligence here. So with this point in the cycle, we have traveled through phases already of this solar bandwave of this year. And those are the phases of the solstice, when we receive the new bandwave of instructions of ourselves. We download those new cosmic source instructions, the new level of light with our ascension over and over again. We're entering new bandwaves of potentiality as our consciousness is able to access more and more expanded bandwidths of who we are and new waves of the creational light, new waves of the evolutionary creative intelligence of source itself. So we and the individual part that each one of us is of that. So more and more we are remembering, we're able to hold in our bodies and remember who we are at those higher levels and what we intend at those higher levels. And so every day becomes a different journey, because instead of being held in a lower vibrational bandwidth of intention, of old 3D or 4D programming of what I might do that day, if that was the bandwave I was in, of how I might use my time and use my energy, of how I might behave, that instead I have something, access to something else, not beyond me, but very much within me, because that new bandwave is downloaded as the new celestial DNA. It's the new bandwave of the quantum information actually as ourselves, within our bodies, right here. And what we find at the beginning of a new solar cycle, a new year, as we're in these early moons and months of 2026, is that a new bandwave of functioning starts to become available, and within yourself you start to sense, sift through it, like a new bandwave, a new options, if you like, a sense of a non-polarized, a more 0 point bandwave of motivation, of response, of how you're present in this living moment and your intention for what you might create in this moment. So more and more of who we are at the higher levels is actually available to us here. Now, of course, that's an enormous shift to go through, and it doesn't just go from being one thing to another. We go through the migrational phases, we go through the change, we go through the shifting in our cells, in our beings, in our bodies. We go through the strangeness of it. We go through the bewilderment or the unknowing of it as we phase from one version of who we've been and how we functioned to another. And so there is strangeness in the phases between, and part of our ascension is learning the grace, because of the measure of the dimensional shift that we're making, of learning the grace of those passage points, of recognizing that we're in a phase of dimensional shift and allowing ourselves to synchronize with the incoming new level that is accessible within us, the new level of you, the new level of me, how I experience myself. And so with this phase, as we come to the Bluebell moon, part of the change that's happening is in how we come to action, how we manifest, how we materialize, how we actualize. And in that, there is an expanding, deepening change taking place. So for many of us who carry this expanded and ethereal or multidimensional remembrance, it's very easy to go into the outer realms and access the light, access the information. And what can feel less familiar and less comfortable is to fully bring that here. And that part of the process is what the Bluebell moon really, really belongs to as the interval of soul star becoming that it represents and shines a light upon, if you like, amplifies. So at this phase, we get the experience of the ethereal information of who we are, having fused with the heart of the earth, having fused with the lattices of light of new earth. And all of this still is the, if you like, the ethereal, the inner phases of new earth creation. And they're very beautiful. And for those of us with affinity with the ethereal, these are phases that we can be really masterful with and really, really attuned to. And that also belongs in the cycles of light of the Elven to the primrose moon. And as we come into that deep fusion with new earth, she generates a Stargate. She generates a Stargate, a dimensional portal into new earth in co-creation with our soul star energy. And what's fascinating about that Stargate is that Stargate, which is subtle matter, it is bioplasma and biophotonic light, it is subtle matter. So something has been co-created with earth in the etheric, if you like. It is there in the subtle matter, in the more ethereal levels of matter. It exists. And it is a fusion. It's a beautiful Stargate that is a fusion of our own immortal starlight homeworld radiance with earth. And what is fascinating is that actually invites us first and foremost to a new level of the creation of ourselves. So we've called through all this new light. We might have felt this new light of who we are, new inspiration, waves of ideas, sentience coming in. And now it's the time, though, where we'll feel it quite differently, because it's almost as though we're pulsed or we're moved, we're propelled through that Stargate that is generated by Earth, through that Stargate of subtle matter. And we are called into actualization, materialization, manifestation. And I felt this really, really strongly through the last few days myself. And I realized it's like if you were bilocating or translocating from one world to another, you went through a portal, you went through a Stargate. Well, that's exactly what you're doing right now. But the Stargate you're going through is into new earth. And it's into the next level of you that is new earth. And because it's not just you downloading ethereal information and bringing that into your being here, which is a phase of our ascension, it is much more like the descent aspect, if you like. Or I like to see it as how I've really been experiencing it is if I was bilocating, translocating from one world to another, what it would feel like to be re-materializing on the other side of that Stargate. What it would be like to coming into a physical density that I perhaps haven't previously inhabited. What it would feel like to be that higher intelligence downloading into this dimension and actually fusing into a physical experience, arriving here. Recomposing like the sort of the atoms, that everything putting itself back together on this side of the portal. So for a few days, I've been having this experience really strongly. And it's interesting because it feels different to other phases of light creation. It can feel more slow or heavy, but at the same time, not like when we go into a density spiral, into say an old pattern to resolve. When we do that, it's not that kind of a heaviness, because it's a heaviness where you can still feel within the core intelligence of the experience you're having. You can really feel the new phase of the consciousness of that which you are, of this new wave of what you're becoming, of what you're able to manifest, to actualize as here. You're really feeling that. That's within the core of this experience. It's just that with and through and around that, there's a greater density. There's a slowing, a heaviness with the becoming of that, because literally you're physicalizing that consciousness. And you are that physicalizing consciousness, which is why the last moon we had this amazing recalibration of our clair senses, of our bodies, our That's been part of the last moon. You can look back at the last pods if you want to discover more about that. But the recalibration, now you might feel, which is what I've been experiencing, that I'm able to track this phase a bit more. And it's never been a phase. This is what I'm really learning, and is becoming stronger for me, because I am one of those with such a, affinity for the ethereal, if you like. But the thing is, what can happen is, if those of us with affinity for the ethereal, it's not that we're not in the material, we are, because we need to be. It's just that what happens is our material life doesn't always gain the imprint of the full sovereignty of our higher aspects, because we're not completing the point in the cycle where we allow that sovereign consciousness, that immortal starlight, that new level of the source of ourselves to physicalize, to become physical. That feels less familiar, less known to us. So what we can end up with is a kind of split where we've still got lower dimensional patterns taking care of our physical expression, and our higher expression isn't getting to be the full animated intelligence of that physical expression. And we might bring it through, like for me, I can write, I can bring it through in lots of creations, but to fully manifest it as the physical consciousness and the creation of the entirety of your physical reality in truth, that requires us learning to master this Stargate passage of our own becoming. And it's one that can become as beautiful and as mastered by us, and will and is becoming so, as all of the rest. We can really learn this. And a good way to think about it is to ask your body how it feels when you call in that experience of yourself moving through the Stargate, re-materializing through it. You are arriving here and actualizing as that one. And just to notice in your body if you feel if there's any fear in that for you, if there's any discomfort, if it brings up any deeper sense of shame, of I shouldn't be here, any of these kind of ripples, just noticing, just observing. And instead of withdrawing, or instead of going back into the ethereal or into the etheric, backing away from this, because it's a threshold, it's a Stargate, it's a juncture. You want to claim back this power to make it your own. Just inviting yourself to indwell in that, to say, I'm going to remain in this experience. I'm going to remain in this experience and allow it actually to deepen rather than withdrawing. And to allow yourself to let those feelings that you go through, any discomfort you go through in that passage, to call in that's part of what shifts for you in the Stargate, in the light of this Stargate power, this incredible subtle matter of this Stargate that Earth has generated in co-creation with your soul star, through which you are the first arrival, if you like, that you get to ask that Stargate, just ask its beautiful energies to fuse through you and heal the layers of you that are not comfortable in that place. And just to expand and invite your body to feel comfortable with that power, because it is power. There's great power in this moment, in this passage. And it's allowing that love that we are to become comfortable with the power of that becoming. So I'd love to invite you, if you're feeling affinity with this, if this feels kindred to you and like something that feels real and part of the passage that you're invited to and going through in the now, to sustain it in that way and to invite yourself to develop that new capacity to be present to this part of you. Because as you do, this Stargate is the directness of our becoming and the manifestation of the divine and the miraculous realities that we're calling through. This is the point where we get to, if we can sustain and build our capacity to be this aspect of the Stargate becoming, where we get to experience the heaven on earth, the reality of the dreams of the soul star becoming real, becoming true, that we get to experience the power of that, as well as the dream of that, of the fullness of that becoming. And so this is the invitation of the Bluebell moon and of this pod 76 of our Elven Pod. So much love. And Have a beautiful week. And also, we're traveling through this in Elven Aurora, the beautiful membership, if you want support with and to travel through the magic of these interdimensional gateways, the transmissions that support the fullness of this dreaming of ourselves into being for our ascension. You're so welcome to join that and experience the deeper transmission. So much love, and I shall see you soon. Tanara ton athien, tana te, thinar, arien, tanare. Farewell for now.